Okay. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Unicode seminar. We are now on session number 2, Quantum Gardening. We have already published a What is Unicode intro video for you to check out. We've also published a 2-part session 1 on vacuum holography that you can check out. The seminar has been extremely front heavy and front loaded. So that first session on vacuum holography is going to be the densest and the longest, which is obviously trying to point to what you are in very beautiful, countless ways. And so the rest of the seminar is going to be a continuation of that, but it's going to be also a further elucidation of components of it that will be really helpful, including how you can transform that awareness space and also how that those transformations in that awareness space affect what you render and the civilization that you live in and the potential utopia that you could build. All right, so what I'm going to show here is that we are continuing theoretical physics and cosmology, but now we're going to be talking about quantum gardening. So I'm going to start things off by showing you a video. And I'm really excited for you to check this out.
Double slit experiment falls. Pattison State Park, Wisconsin. Look at that interference pattern right there. So that's gravity and light out of your two eyeballs. And there's your little interference pattern and your conscious creation of whatever light dream you want, baby. Perfect representation right here in nature.
Okay. So what you just watched there is one of the most beautiful nature displays of the double slit that I've ever seen. It's in Pattison State Park up in northern Wisconsin, just across the bridge from Duluth in Minnesota. And it is by Superior in Wisconsin, right off Lake Superior. And it's very, very beautiful because, and it's not always like that. Sometimes the seasons and the water flows don't allow it to look exactly like that. But at that exact moment celebrating my mom's birthday that week, it was so beautiful and so perfect because it was just a exact emanation of that double slit cosmology. It was an exact perfect emanation just right there in nature where you can see that infinite creation rendering itself. That water flow is like infinite creation rendering itself, and then whatever the observer portal is desiring to render, that interference pattern it's self-assembling into the hologram that the observer portal is desiring to render in that moment. So an interference pattern is something that the gravitational observer portal is using to self-render and self-assemble whatever experiences it wants creatively and artistically for itself. So we're actually saying that the source is flowing out from the double slits, and it's also intaking what is flowing out at the same time. So flowing out and intaking it, 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 rendering it and consuming it, rendering it and experiencing it. And why we use that example of that Niagara Falls is because it's obviously known as one of the strongest and largest waterfalls in the world. And there's basically nobody who swims upstream and masters it. So meaning the source flow, the vacuum, its creativity is so strongly flowing in the direction towards the circus, in the direction towards local realism, in the direction towards contraction of the aperture, in the direction towards separation, in the direction towards all of those things. And so to swim upstream, to master what you are and how you work and how you causally root everything, is a process that takes a tremendous amount of passion. It takes a tremendous amount of desire for truth. It takes a tremendous amount of deconstructing all of the false beliefs and assumptions that run your reality show. And so it takes a lot of work to swim upstream and to master it, but it's unbelievably rewarding because you learn how everything is rendered. You learn what you are and how you work and how you causally root everything. So anytime that you think about that, about the nature of the infinite source and how it works, you got to think about it in that Niagara Falls kind of way, because it actually totally lets you relax in the sense that you no longer are as essentially contracted about how other observer portals are not waking up, because it takes a lot of energy in order for observer portals to go through the process of expanding their aperture. And it makes perfect sense because they have to swim upstream Niagara just to be able to expand their aperture portal to understand what they are and how they work. So all experiences are seeded. So everything that's flowing out of that double slit, everything that's flowing out of that, everything that's being rendered by that double slit is a gravitational cultivator of timelines. It's all being seeded every moment. Everything's being seeded. Every single experience is seeded and then it's cultivated. It's seeded and it's cultivated. The gravitational observer, the vacuum, is like soil. It's like infinite soil. And every single experience that you're growing is being seeded and then watered. So this is particularly relevant if you have a significant other, if you have a spouse, if you're married, that kind of thing, if you have children, right? Because what's happening is you've basically seeded an experience that's happened for like 5, 10, 15, 20 years, something like that, right? So what you've done is you seeded the experience of getting married or having kids or something like that, and then you've just watered that soil and cultivated that soil for 5, 10, 15, 20 years. Now, at any point, if you felt like that you didn't want to be in that anymore, all that you did was you seeded a different experience. So you stopped nourishing and growing the plant of being in that significant other or in that marriage or in that relationship or whatever. And all you did was you seeded a different quantum rendering, a different quantum gardened flower of your rendered experience. And then you started nourishing that. So that the old one got composted back into infinite potential, and the new one just started to grow because you started to give it cultivation. So what you see is the quantum seed of your cultivation. Renderings are plants growing, being given nutrients or not. Okay? That's all it is. I mean, even something as simple as, where you go to eat, you're just giving that rendering nutrients because you believe in that rendering, you like the taste of it, the food that's served there. So you're just further cultivating that plant, that experience. Or if you find something that you prefer to eat that's better, then you stop nurturing that as much and you nurture the new seed more. So it's very much like a seed first. It's like back 5 years ago when I was writing my first book, High Level Perception, I talked about it like seed theory. Everything is being seeded, everything's being created, everything is gravitationally being rendered by consciousness. So everything is being seeded and everything's being cultivated. Everything. And it's all growing into beautiful plants that are holograms, basically.
The nutrients being like your awareness.
The nutrients are like your awareness, are like your energy, your attention, your love, your passion for that specific
And you can either kill the plant
hologram. Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can take the fruit of that plant, which could be your children from a marriage, or they could be the great success of your business or whatever it is, and you can say, hey, I'm ready maybe to shift into a different business. So you stop cultivating that plant, which is growing a certain fruit, and you start cultivating a different plant. And so, that might happen when you switch frequencies internally, because you might stop cultivating something that is self-serving, and you might start cultivating something that's more holistic serving. So that would require a switch in not only the seed, but also what the fruit is, what the hologram is. So when you switch frequencies, you're actually switching what you're quantum gardening, which is amazing. Yeah. So that's what this gravitational observer is. It's this ripe, empty soil. And you have these codes, you have these ideas that grow. So you have to have simultaneously God as infinite creation while it's also infinitely eating or experiencing what it's creating. So you have to have this ripe, empty soil that's always seeding an experience and that's always eating the fruit of what it's seeded.
seeding what you desire.
You're seeding what you desire, and then you're eating the fruit of what you've seeded every single moment in a spinorial, holographic fashion. And so it's a very simple idea. The codes, the infinite potential, all of our little manifold of all the code points, the quantum state of the observer, that's all just code. It's all just code, it's all just idea, it's all just infinite potential. And then whichever little diodes are lit up in that infinite potential is what is growing as that holographic plant and producing the fruit. So at any moment, if you're growing a certain plant and a certain fruit, all you're doing is just changing. You're just performing a little bit of calculus, little change over time across those code points, and you're starting to render a different plant hologram which has a different fruit, which then affects the entangled web of civilization differently. So that's how changes in your internal state of consciousness affect the civilization that you're ambiently embedded in for this dream. And we'll get to that more in the next session today about making changes in that root and how important it is for changing the fruit. We've been talking about that for years. Love that. Such a good analogy. So now that next thing that it says there's watch out for projective tethers. Okay, why? Because codes are seeking to own you. That gravitational observational soil is so rich with potential and possibility, and it's so open and empty and free that at any moment it can get one of those little projective tethers that come from another little observer portal, And if that gravitational observer doesn't have mastery, its ability to just intake that quantum code, that little cum seed, into itself, into its little soil, and to just have it take root in its portal and start taking root, and then start holographically rendering whatever that seed's intention is you're more susceptible to that if you don't have mastery over how you work. So the more mastery you have over quantum gardening, the more mastery you have over the conscious manifold and all of the little diodes and code points, the more you can actually see the projective tethers that are trying to fly in at you and spew little seeds into your portal and have that take root and then have that render a reality for you.
Because it's giving that, it's like the cord tether of your attachments. Gives it the solidity.
Yeah. And okay, so there's the resonances from your existing set of code points that are then allowing. So for example, the more that if you still are carrying some sort of separation trauma, then you're more likely to allow someone, which is just a reflection of yourself, but to allow that projection to come in, which is, hey, you should agree with our political divide. Our party is smarter than the other party. But if you don't have that separation trauma, if you've healed that separation trauma and wounding, you will see that portal's projection like just a musical frequency that you've already transcended and fully seen through and integrated, and it does not touch you whatsoever.
Doesn't see viable soil.
Yeah. It's like if you are a professional violinist, and then someone comes and starts playing hot cross buns from 4th grade or something on the violin, I don't know, right? You're just like, that's so cute that you're projecting that separation tether at me, but I'm a professional violinist. I am Steph Curry. I shoot 3-pointers like God. And you're a little 4th grader on the basketball court, that can barely shoot a layup. That's what it starts to feel like when you have mastery. We talked about the analogy with Neo and Agent Smith. It's just like that. It gets to that point. Agent Smith loses all ability to project a tether into Neo. Neo is always dodging all of the bullets in slow motion. Every single tether cannot enter. And it gets frustrated. It gets frustrated because it can't own you anymore. It's hungry. It's trying to own you. It wants to own the space, the free, open, empty space. It wants to own it. It wants to put its little roots and seed in it in order for it to possess another gravitational portal. The more gravitational portals that the seed possesses, the more it's doing well, and the longer it lives, the longer it proliferates. It's just like a genetic codified thing, but it's done in the land of infinite potential and memetics and ideas and codes being spread.
Same archetype as a vampire.
The comment is this is the same archetype as a vampire. And what's the other? What was it? Oh, like a weed. And the other one's like a weed. Yeah. Yes. So now watch this. If you get so damn good at the whole conscious manifold, if you get so damn good at all of the code points and the diodes, if you get so good at all the transformations and their mappings and serving observer portals coming back home to themselves, if you get so good at quantum gardening, if you get so damn good at that, right? That's all that mastery is about. I just laid out what mastery is all about. If you get so damn good at that, you become unshakable, unstoppable, unfuckwithable, it's pure sovereignty. It's pure mastery. It's pure, you can see every single code, every single tether that's flying. It's like, okay, let me put it this way. If the internet and social media is a big symphony of music that's happening, you as a master of consciousness can essentially break up the entire internet into an electromagnetic spectrum of frequencies. So you can see where all of the separation propaganda is. You can see where all of the seeking energy is, the attempt to come home and heal. You can see where all of the healed energy is that's trying to call the consciousness back home to itself. You can see all of that happening. So that's where you want to get to if you want to fully embody mastery. You want to be able to see every single word that's being said by the observer portal as a frequency. And you want to be around observer portals that don't try to project their tethers into you, but that respect the free will, that respect the resonance, that respect the co-creative nature from a non-separate place. All of us here now and that are tuning in are all coming from the place of non-separation. We're coming from the place of resonance and harmonics. That's where we're coming from. So that's where you want to grow from. You want to grow from that place after you're deeply realized into how this all works. And to some extent, we have to be careful because it's not that the code itself, it's not necessarily that the code itself has some sort of a negative spin, or that it has that inherent desire to like manipulate the soil space. It's that the observer portal that has spun the quanta, the code itself, into a proliferated way, in a deceptive way, in a manipulative way. It's all about the spin. Just like in quantum physics, you have particles that have spin. The same thing's true with these codes. These codes have spins. So I can present a code in a way that is extremely spin neutral. I can present it in a way that says, hey, if this resonates, join, something like that. But I can also say that, that this is the only pharmaceutical that's going to help heal your pain. And that, for $1 billion that you can buy our pharmaceutical and it will help your pain, while I go out and I deceive you further. So the spin of the quanta, the spin of the seed that's being shared, you can detect the spin also on the seed that's being shared, right? So it works like that. The observer portal is determining the spin on the seed. So yeah.
Do you want to
Nice.
distort your reality or not?
Yeah. You can share, listen to this beautiful violin music that I'm going to play just because I love playing this violin music, or you can say that I am literally the best violin teacher, and if you don't use me to learn violin, you're only going to worsen your progress. Something like that. So basically, the code itself of sharing the violin music, the observer portal is spinning that code based on its frequency. If it wants to spin it in a way that is trying to deceptively market for its own self-gratification, or if it wants to market in a neutral, harmonic, love-based, free will-based way, in a cymatic way that's not in the red frequency band. That's a deep subject in itself. That's a very, very deep subject that we just got into that requires a lot more working on that specific subject. But the core part of it is that the gravitational observer portal is itself spinning. It's rendering the quantum codes, those seeds, And then it is, from that place, you can tell if it's trying to spread itself in a way that is deceptive or if it's trying to spread itself in a way that is more harmonic, something along those lines. It's a big subject. So the collapsing of infinite potential is the seeding, the nurturing of that is the cultivating, and when you move on from that, you're composting it. So when the spinner is the core of reality, when you take this and you connect it to how we ended the vacuum holography part 2, where you had those two images side by side of a gravitational lensing black hole and also a beautiful kind of cosmically spun headset portal. This applies to that specific exercise and experience, because every single moment what's happening is that you can say centripetally seeding the experience. So you're centripetally seeding the experience, while you can say that you're centrifugally composting. So just like we did that example where I was saying, hey, look, I'm currently seeing 2 screens over there, right? And out of infinite potential, what I'm about to do is I'm about to seed seeing the arc of dreams behind my head. It's in infinite potential right now. But as I start to seed the arc of dreams into my field of view, what I'm also doing is I'm composting seeing the 2 screens back into infinite potential. So that's how a fruit of the fruit, where you are looking is the fruit. Yeah, where you are looking is the fruit, which came from the seed of your intention. Following? Yes, okay, good. So, and it's another trinity, yes, which has been a theme that we've been talking about quite a bit. So wherever you are looking is the fruit, which came from the seed of your intention, always, and every single time that you make any movement at all, you're always composting. Composting and rendering the next seeded fruit are a spinorial way of quantum gardening. Of the gravitational observer soil, always quantum gardening. Always quantum gardening. You know, we've discussed, okay, we're going to go and enjoy Palisades State Park in South Dakota. What we've done is we've seeded an intention that's going to show up as the fruit of our perception and our experience. And by doing that, we will have composted the finishing of the seminar. So that's a great way to understand how every single thing, just like when you eat your meal and then the next day you're pooping it out. It's the exact same thing. You drink your coffee, before you know it, you're urinating. It's the exact same thing. It's all over the place. That pattern is all over the place. And so we're saying it's fundamental to the way that you render your hologram. It's fundamental to the way that this vacuum holography works. It works in this type of spinorial, creating and consuming or seeding a fruit of your perception while also composting. Yeah.
Making a baby with your eyes.
Making a baby with your eyes. Yeah. Yeah. It's just that, yeah. It's like which is also then it's also the baby like becomes an adult and then and then it like as you move to the next scene. Yeah. All right, so let's elaborate a little bit more on the centripetal force of seeding. So, and I just want to be clear. It's not that these things are. We're not trying to say that these are independent forces at all. We're trying to say that they belong to infinite consciousness. This is how infinite consciousness works. This is just how vacuum holography works, how it moves, how it experiences. We're just using these words to describe how it does that. We're not saying these are separate forces and this kind of thing. We're just saying that this is how it renders. This is how it does its thing. So this is the seeding act in quantum gardening, the centripetal. Consciousness drawing potential inward and focusing its gravitational attention into its rendering. It's how the observer creates a stable quantum reality. The vacuum curves around attention. The centripetal is the inward, the warping, the rendering, the gravity of intent. Okay, now the centrifugal, which, one second, this should say composting. There we go. All right. Thank you. All right. So let me screen share again. All right. All right, back we come. Okay. So there we go. Seeding as centripetal and composting as centrifugal. Okay. All right. So, I got to fix that too. Okay, now it should be back. Okay. All right. Pardon the brief correction. It's been quite intense, I must say, trying to put together all of the Unicode. And there, again, like I said in the What is Unicode intro session, there may be omissions, there may be errors. Yeah, and this is an ongoing process in a decentralized way of building out the conscious manifold that is vacuum holography and how it works. And so this is going to be an ongoing process, and it's going to have little things like that come up. But I'm glad we caught that and corrected it. Okay, so all right, so as we said, we have the seeding as the centripetal, which we already broke down, and now we have the composting as that centrifugal. So this is the composting. This is when consciousness releases focus. Okay? The light unbinds the rendering and disperses back into the vacuum. This is very profound. I mean, in my opinion, this is one of the most profound ways that you can understand how consciousness is rendering reality. How gravitational observation is quantum gardening. How gravitational observation is quantum gardening. Let me say that again. How gravitational observation is quantum gardening. Okay? What you're looking at right now is being binded and held together by gravity, light, information. It's being held and bound together as an experience based on your gravitational observational intention, based on your intention. As soon as you have a different intention, what you're immediately doing is you are unbinding the existing hologram that you are looking at. You are releasing it. You are unbinding it. Does that make sense? Yeah? Good. What about over here, Bro Duda?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. Beautiful. Yeah, I think this is one of the best ways to be able to get, I mean, it's just like, you know, like imagine and this sometimes happens in a video game screen. It just depends. If you use a curved monitor in a video game screen, sometimes you can get these warping fisheye effects on the outside of the screen. But usually what you get in a video game is you get a flat display that doesn't look like it actually warps or bends on the edges of it. But what we're saying is that when you are that video game character running around in that game, what you're actually doing is you are constantly unbinding what has been the rendered environment, and you are then holographically rendering or binding what you are then looking at or rendering. So so in a game, when you go from, if you're looking at a certain landscape, or you're looking at a city, or whatever you're looking at, you are in that moment you are binding that beautifully rendered art that you're looking at. In the moment you decide that I want to travel to another terrain or another place or a different quest or mission or whatever, you can see the video game unbinding. As you move your character, you are unbinding that perceptual rendering, and you are beginning to move to another perceptual rendering. So that's when you are summoning the console in the form of the vacuum energy to provide to you a new rendering. So again, remember we were talking about the cosmological constant problem. We're talking about you use a little amount of vacuum energy when you are just looking at a rendering. Once you begin trying to drive to the gym to go work out, you're starting to use a lot of vacuum energy to render the appearance. So for gravity, light, and information to render you that next appearance.
Especially if it's something new.
Especially if it's something new, yeah. Yeah. Because it's a pattern for the gym that you've been at before, that you're already aware of how it works, all of that. Yeah. Yes. Whereas that's why people love traveling to new places. Yeah. People love to travel to new places because it's a new rendering, and it takes a lot of rendering energy for that observer portal to see what it's like wherever it travels for the first time.
Yeah. And that can also measure the degree of openness of that. Some people hate travel. They're closed off.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there can just be a feeling also of homeness where you don't. Yes. So where were we? We were on the unbinding. I'm glad we've taken a good amount of time on that. So now, when it's unbound, when it unbinds, it unbinds the rendering, and it disperses back into the vacuum, and it's that outward decomposing motion, which is the letting go after creation. It's centrifugal, it's outward, it's dispersive, it's unbinding, it's the release of form. So there's a binding of form and a release of form, binding of form and a release of form, a binding of form and a release of form. Every single moment, every moment. So this beautifully plays on one of our dear beloveds, Walter Russell. Rhythmic balanced interchange. You have a warping and a binding and an unbinding. So a warping as a binding, and then an unbinding as a dispersion back into infinite potential that's constantly happening in an interchange or in a spinorial way. That is the fundamental nature of vacuum holography itself. So that spinorial rendering, it is a gravitational observation portal that is quantum gardening. So it's warping through that quantum gardening, and then it's unbinding what it's gardened for its next creation, for whatever that next thing is. So for something like when you go to the restaurant and you eat the meal, you've warped the experience of the restaurant. You leave the restaurant, you've unbound the rendering of being at the restaurant. Okay, got it. Great. Now, but the next one is a little bit, it's more difficult to understand, because when you have a mom or a dad or something, you can't just unbind the experience of having a mom or dad, right? So meaning it's not a scene. I mean, it's not a short scene, let's say, like eating at a restaurant. For a mom or a dad or something like that, or a son or a daughter or whatever, just examples or experiences like that, what we're saying is that you're warping the experience of having that mom, dad, child, whatever, but the unbinding of having that mom, dad, child, or whatnot, it only happens when the body dies, when there's that cycling of that conscious portal to its next adventure. So that's why also it's like that observer portal is unbinding from the avatar. You see? So when you start to put this in a scale invariant way, you can have it for eating at a restaurant, which only takes an hour or two, and you can see how, oh, I totally warped and then unbound that experience. I got that. But for, a parent or a whole child or a journey like that, you've warped and created that artistic rendering that only gets unbound when either their body passes or cycles or yours does. You will always be the mother or father of your children until your portal cycles its avatar. So there's just different scale invariant, basically. It's just scale invariant. So it can be literally as short as sipping this cup of coffee. I've warped this experience, and now I've unbinded myself from rendering that experience. Okay? Or it can be eating at a restaurant, which takes an hour or two, or it can be being a mother, father, or a child, or something like that, son or daughter. So it's scale invariant like that. Yeah. So the fruit of what you grow is the reality you see. So every single thing that you see is your fruit. It is your intention, your seed manifest as a fruit in that moment. As soon as you're done at the restaurant, that means your fruit has been eaten and now it is composted because you've moved on to go to the gym to work out. So you've seeded a new fruit of an experience called a workout at a gym. The same thing's true with your avatar. The same thing's true with your avatar. You seed a beautiful avatar experience for yourself, which you are living the fruit of right now. You are living the fruit of your seeded avatar observer portal experience. When you are done with this avatar portal, beautiful artistic holographic experience, you compost it, which again solves that black hole information paradox. Where the fuck does the information go? Well, genius, it all gets recombined. It all gets recycled. Infinite creation means infinity. It means eternity having infinite creation. And it's always being in a process. It's always in a field and an infinite library of potentiality. It's always there.
Understanding this can make you very intentional by design.
It's super intentional by design. Yeah, super.
So a lot of times we'll just design stuff.
Super. And you need to be a little bit slower just to be able to design that intentionally, which is another thing that the society and the conditioning and all that stuff does not like. It doesn't like it, right? So, but in order to seed all of your experiences super intentionally like this, you actually do need to be a little slower in your tempo so that you can be more lucid and more conscious with every single thing that you are doing. So that way, when one of those projective tethers comes, you don't just go, yeah, okay, right? But instead you go, hold on a second. Yep. So quantum as code, as come, as seed, as state, as frame. So that infinite potential, The superposition of all possibilities is all codes, all come, all seeds, all states, all frames, all code points. And it's that conscious manifold. It's that infinite gravitational singularity, observerse, that is channeling, that is taking all of that infinite possibility and it's turning it into a single plant in its current experience. It's turning it into a single fruit right here, looking at a single render timeline and experience. Out of the womb is the come, is the fruit of this experience. It's the seed of this experience. You get the state, you get the frame of this experience right here, out of all of it. So all of those things deeply connect. It connects to our deepest biological reproductive nature. It connects deeply to the way that memetics proliferate over the internet. It connects to all of infinite potential and all possibility, and it rendering into a single fruit. So something as simple as you have a qubit, and then you have the decoherence, and then you have the rendering. Okay? A qubit, the decoherence, and the rendering. So an infinite superposition decoheres into a rendering. A gravitational observer, it seeds scenes of experience. A gravitational observer seeds scenes of experience. You are looking through. You are the observerse. You are an infinite singularity called God, looking through a portal, looking through a conscious portal right now, seeding your own light holographic rendering and adventure that is producing the scene of a fruit that is called your experience, that is called your virtual reality right now. So happy 100-year anniversary of quantum mechanics. So we are presenting what we're calling quantum gardening. This is the 100-year anniversary of quantum mechanics. It's been going on for a very long time, but 1925 was a very profound time because it's when we started to learn that this is when the uncertainty principle became reality. This is when we started to learn about complementarity. This is when we started to learn about this no co-display thing, which we're going to get to in a little bit. This is where we started to learn about superposition and probability and entanglement. And that was a very, 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 very trippy thing because it started to push more and more physicists to be like, okay, we actually have to understand what the observer is and what its role is, because, and we'll get there in a second, this is a big change in physics. So basically, the further that we zoomed in to physics, the more that we realized that the thing that's doing the zooming in is affecting what we're doing, what we're looking at, what we're experiencing. It's the source of what is experiencing. Right? The further you zoom in, the more you realize you're the source of what is being looked at. Yeah. Okay, so to celebrate the 100-year quantum mechanics anniversary, I will ask you a very simple question. What is your interpretation of quantum mechanics? Okay, everyone and their mother has heard, maybe some people haven't heard, but everyone and their mother has heard of quantum mechanics or quantum physics. Not everyone and their mother, but a lot. Billions of people have heard of quantum mechanics. Right? And probably another billion or two probably have heard that there are multiple interpretations of quantum mechanics, right? Maybe-ish, let's just say. But my question to you is, what is your interpretation of quantum mechanics? Did you literally learn so much about you've learned, oh my gosh, there's this new thing in physics called quantum mechanics and quantum theory, but I don't really care enough to ever investigate what it means or what the interpretations are. Okay, so that's why the second sentence says, why do you not have one, but you have a retarded amount of political stances? So what you're telling me when you tell me that, hey, dog, I don't have an interpretation of quantum mechanics, What you're doing is you're telling me that you have a greater desire to have a retarded amount of political stances or other kinds of you care more about trying to convince me that one political party is better than the other than you care about researching what quantum theory is and how it relates to consciousness. So that's what you're telling me when you do that. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to reflect to you the inverse of that. And I'm trying to tell you that you should instead, if you care about reality, you should instead care about having an interpretation of quantum theory and not caring about political division and propaganda, because what quantum theory will give you is it will give you the source code of what you are, and then from there you can vibrate out a unity consciousness that transcends all political polarization. Da 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 da. Okay? So if you read that next part, it says, if you don't have an interpretation of quantum mechanics, you are renouncing the investigation into how you work. If you don't have an interpretation of quantum mechanics, you are renouncing the investigation into how you work. So you're basically saying that I don't care about how I work. I don't care about entanglement. I don't care about superposition, and I don't care about probability. I don't care about collapse of infinite potential into my rendered experience. I don't care about any of that. What I care about is political propaganda, and I care about war and violence and separation and all of that surface level nonsense that drives the circus of insanity. Which is fine if that's your orientation. But if you actually care about truth, if you care about reality with a capital R, then you should care about quantum theory and quantum mechanics and interpretations of quantum mechanics, which we're about to dive into right here. So, quantum mechanics, it forced physics to confront relative to the observer. It forced physics to confront who is the observer. Why are we being forced to give the observer such a special role in the nature of reality? So it literally took that contracted aperture in materialism, and quantum mechanics was like, you have to expand your aperture back to the observers. Now you don't have a choice. I'm reflecting to you that you now don't have a choice, because your materialism thing is a complete dead end. So now we're saying that, okay, if quantum mechanics forced the observer to have a special role in the nature of reality, now you have to ask the question, who is the observer? So now physicists are also having to ask, okay, but who is the observer? So is the observer a name? No. So, okay, does a gravitational singularity have a name? Does gravity have a name? Does a gravitational observer have a name? And is it the same gravitational observer that's behind all eyes, that's collapsing or rendering a single civilizational reality experience?
God is described of many names.
Yeah, because you can call it any of those core code points also.
Yeah.
So the fact that you now have to ask the question, who is doing the measurement? Is this Atlas that's doing the measurement of drinking coffee right now? Is it? Or is it an observer? Is it the observers that's doing a measurement of tasting coffee? Because I clearly see that it's the latter. So we're talking about God as the observers having the experience of drinking that coffee. So we're talking about taking that question of who is the observer and using that as a gateway for yourself to deconstruct the illusion that your portal has a name that is attributed to it like a solid thing, because it doesn't. Okay, we'll get to that deconstruction more. It's coming up more. So, is an observer a gravitational portal and collapser? If gravity doesn't have a name, do observers? So we're as we give the observer this deeply obviously special role in the nature of reality, now we're also having to ask, okay, who is the observer? If the observer is gravitational, where exactly is the name associated with the gravitational structuring and rendering that's happening right now? Where exactly is that name? So are these observer portals that are influencing quantum collapse actually the same across all eyes? So does this word entanglement, does it now belong to the observers? So now we're having to start to say, okay, well, quantum gravity, well, what if the word entanglement belongs to a gravitational singularity? What if the nature of a gravitational singularity is an entangled superposition that is decohering through the observer portals that is rendering what we call a civilization?
It's the only way it makes sense.
It's the only way it makes sense. Yeah. How else can you reconcile consciousness, gravity, and quantum mechanics?
So they're all feeding each other. They're all supporting each other everywhere.
Yeah,
You look at it.
yeah. All of them are supporting each other everywhere you look at it. Yeah. They're all one fundamental force called God, called infinity, infinite consciousness, that's appearing like, oh, we're saying that this is gravity and this is quantum mechanics and this is consciousness and this kind of thing. But it's all just one thing called you.
Like all your cells.
A gluon, yeah, the cells in the body, same thing.
And they all get
The heart, yeah.
desiring to do
Yes.
some sort of function to hold its form together.
Yes. Yes. Yep. Each one of those organs is doing a very specific thing to hold that form together. Yes. So this entangled gravitational observer is attributeless. It's without names. Oh, getting closer to God. ... So probability and collapse relative to the observer. Okay, so now I'm going to go through a couple things that typically we say, and when we say these things, what we're doing is we're summoning quantum mechanics. We're summoning infinite potentiality and probability spaces, but we don't even know we're summoning those things. But whenever we say, hey, let's say you're automatically summoning a probability space. When you say, how about you're summoning a probability space, right? When you say, how about we go to this restaurant, what you're doing is you're gauging the probability space in an entangled network of observers, and you're saying, hey, what's the percentage? What's the percentage that this entangled network of observers wants to go to this restaurant? And then you ascribe a probability weight to it. I ascribe a probability weight to it. You ascribe a probability weight to it. Everyone describes a probability weight to it. And then if the probability weight of that entangled observer network, if it's high enough, it will collapse the rendered experience of eating at that restaurant. So another way to summon that probability space is by saying it depends. It depends on this, it depends on that, or maybe. These are all probability explorations. So you're always referencing quantum mechanics, whether you want to or not. You're always referencing it. Yeah. Nice. That's a good head nod. Very good. So literally, it's funny because the whole thing earlier about like what's your interpretation of quantum mechanics? It's like, oh, I don't know anything about quantum physics. It's like, well, actually, all the time when you say, hey, let's consider this or let's consider that, you're basically always using probability, always, and you're always rendering a reality based on gauging probability of a shared observer network to render experiences.
Like shoots your tentacles out behind still you, oneness, and starts like vibrating at possibly this, possibly that.
Yes. Possibly this, possibly that, and then it goes into that rendered reality. Yes. It's a great way to put it. Like if you feel behind you, you can kind of feel behind you that infinite potential and probability of maybe this, maybe that, which thing do I want to do? And then in front of you is the rendering of one of those things.
So you're eating.
Yeah. Okay, quantum mechanics literally translates to infinite potential, the vacuum, the entanglement of all observers, the singularity, ideas relative to the observer, its quantum state, and probabilistic decoherence / collapse of superposition, which is holographic rendering. So typically when modern physicists that actually know what they're talking about, so which again there's not that many that actually really even know what they're talking about, but when they actually talk about what quantum mechanics is, they give three main words that represent what quantum mechanics is, which is now it's starting to be more and more mainstreamed and accepted that these are the words. But the three words all three are here. It's entanglement, it's probability, and it's superposition. Okay? So, you can also tie superposition to infinite potential. You can tie entanglement to the observerse, a singularity of entangled observers. You can tie ideas to probabilities and those probabilities being rendered, and then the main contentious thing right now is we don't know what is doing the collapsing of the wave function. We don't know what is rendering probabilities. We don't know why certain outcomes are happening and not other ones. We don't know why. And it's like, well, actually, we do know why.
It's right there.
It's right there looking out your face right now. Yeah. It's looking out your face. Okay. So, I mean, this alone can take you all the way. I mean, we've presented how many slides now that we've said that, by digging into this, you can go all the way into yourself and how you work. Okay, so when you see things, look at this list, right? A quantum state. Okay, the state of the house, the state of affairs, the state of the union, the state of your mind, the state of the gravitational observer, right? All those things are saying is that conscious manifold has a certain array of diodes that are lit up. That's all it's saying. It's just you have a certain array of diodes lit up in any given moment, and that's generating your little pop-out holographic rendering.
It's just the entanglement of all of your possibilities.
You have all your code points that are lit up rendering, the entanglement of all your code points lit up rendering a hologram. So if I ask a simple question, what is the state of the house? You'll probably say, well, the state of my house is that, I'm putting on a new roof on it or whatever you're saying about your house. I have some stuff that I need to clean up out of one of my rooms or whatever, right? You have a certain state of your house, right? Well, the same thing's true about the state of your mind, right? What's the current state of your mind? When someone asks you, hey, can I ask for your help? What's the first thing that you say? What can I help with? What's going on?
Yeah.
All you're doing is you're gauging their quantum state. That's all you're doing. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it depends what quantum. Can you please help me? Depends what quantum state you're in. Yeah. That's funny. That's so funny. Oh. So that's the same thing when you ask, what's the state of the union of a country when it gives, our current, economic progress is like this. The current good stuff that we're building in infrastructure looks like this. We have this kind of an unemployment rate. We have this kind of a GDP, blah, 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 right? So, yeah, but never is it ever measuring the, mental health and well-being or, the deflation of the CPI, which we'll get to that kind of stuff, but we'll get there. It's coming. But so you can, if you just think about the state of all the things that you're familiar with that's listed there, and now think of, or the state of your favorite football team or your favorite basketball team or your favorite baseball team, right? It's in a certain state, right? Your pitcher from your baseball team might be injured. So now you're calling on your injured reserve squad to be able to fill in for that primary pitcher, or your primary quarterback might be injured or whatever. So the state of your favorite football team might be that your running back is injured. Do you see what I mean? So there's ways to tie this to whatever you're familiar with, right? But when you tie this to the state of the gravitational observer, you're basically saying that, every time that I talk to a portal, that portal is coming from a quantum state. That portal is coming from an array of diodes that are lit up, that it's projecting its hologram through. Okay, now we're going to reframe all quantum mechanics interpretations. Oh, yay. Okay. So, here's the thing. When you're asked this question, when I asked you at the beginning, I asked you the question, what is your interpretation of quantum mechanics, right? If you can't even name a single interpretation of quantum mechanics and you care about truth, you're not on the right path. Okay? So if you care about truth, then you need to at least know some of the interpretations of quantum mechanics. Okay? So you need to be able to at least know, at least to some extent, what the different interpretations of quantum mechanics are. So what we're about to do is we're about to list the most well-known interpretations of quantum mechanics, and certain other ones are given. For example, the Wigner von Neumann consciousness causes collapse is obviously embedded in here, or John Archibald Wheeler's participatory universe by the observer is also given because it's in here. So just to be clear about certain things. But let's go ahead and break this down, and then we'll fit all of it into our Unicode. We're going to fit all of this into our conscious manifold, okay? But first, before we fit it all into the Unicode, we're going to reframe it all in ways that should click and make sense, where there's no longer any confusion between the interpretations, and there's no longer some sort of religious argument that's happening between different interpretations because all they're doing is taking a partial aspect of quantum mechanics and they're saying that that's the whole picture. But it's not. It's a partial aspect. What you have to do is you have to integrate all of the partial aspects into a single unicoded whole. Okay. So let's start with we still good on audio? Still good? All looks good over here. Yeah? Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. So we'll start with many worlds. Okay, many worlds is infinite potential actualizing. Now the question is, how is that infinite potential actualizing itself? So it's like an infinite unrendered potentiality, but it's actualizing itself how? Through the Copenhagen interpretation, because the collapse is a timeline rendering. So the way that the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics is actualizing itself is through the Copenhagen interpretation of quantum mechanics, which is a collapsing into a single, no code display rendering. I cannot be in Florida and in Alaska at the same time. I have to be in one of those two states. Okay? So we're taking a, quote, many worlds of your potentiality, and we're channeling it into a Copenhagen rendering. Now, the question in the pilot wave interpretation of quantum mechanics is if reality is being piloted, what is doing the piloting of that wave function collapsing? And the answer is gravity, as the observer is piloting the quantum reality. I like the pilot is also, it's great because it sits in the cabin of the airplane and it pilots it. It's, or in the cabin of your car, whenever you're driving, you're sitting there piloting your car and you're rendering reality wherever you are driving. You sit in your car, people always say this all the time. They're like, dude, I love cars because cars are like freedom, man. They are, right? Having wheels is like freedom, right? So every time you sit in a car, you're like, dude, I'm in a superposition. Where should I go? Right? And then as soon as you start driving, you are collapsing a superposition to a single location that you're driving to. That's why it can feel so fun when you divert from your normal path or algorithm of what road you take to get to that spot, and you take a different one. So what you did is you brought something new and novel and unique out of potentiality into your rendering that has a novelty to it. An exploration. And now cubism, so that's quantum Bayesianism. So that's that the observer's quantum state, that its very beliefs are rendering its reality. So that array of diodes that are lit up in the conscious manifold, in the Unicode, that's the quantum state of the observer. And that's the very thing that's rendering its reality. RQM is relational quantum mechanics. So the observer is an entangled relational vacuum. We're going to break down all of these into a little bit more depth here, just as we keep going, just so you know also. And then the observer creates as a qubit that's decohering. That's your decoherence interpretation of quantum mechanics as well. So all of these interpretations make up one thing called capital YU and how you work. Okay, so another great way to say this is the phenomenological unification of general relativity and quantum mechanics happens through consciousness. The phenomenological unification of general relativity and quantum mechanics happens through consciousness. All right, so now let's break down these interpretations. And just sit in this. Just sit in it. Like, just,
Can you give another word for phenomenology?
yeah, your felt experience. Yeah. The observer as consciousness is the unification of general relativity and quantum mechanics. You're looking through that divine eye of God right now. You're sitting in the throne. You've never left it. You can't ever leave it. And it reconciles all of the confusion in physics and consciousness studies and philosophy and how reality is rendered, why civilization looks the way it does, how to create changes in the root or in the quantum state space in order to change what is being rendered.
There's so many archetypes throughout every society, every culture, hints to this in different, more vague, abstract names.
Yeah.
Their gods.
Yeah, they have glyphs. They have different glyphs. Every single society has a different glyph. Almost every society has a different glyph that points to the same invariant universal meaning. Yeah. But again, a lot of it has still been externalized and outsourced, but it's for the specific ones that are pointing at the in-source. Yeah. So many worlds. So many worlds is infinite reality actualizing itself. So how is it doing that? It's being rendered through Copenhagen. So the collapse renders one outcome with no co-display. So this is the how of many worlds. So how is God as infinite potential rendering itself as this experience through Copenhagen? What's piloting the rendering is the vacuum, which is the gravitational observer that's collapsing potential. And then with cubism, the observer's quantum state are the codes it holds in its mind, which render its reality. The observer's quantum state are the codes it holds in its mind, which render its reality. I love this one so much.
Direct with the universe's mind.
Yeah. Okay. Now, with relational quantum mechanics, this one has a little deeper elaboration, but the primary way to understand it is there are ultimately no indexicals, but relativistic positional locations. So I, you, me, we, us, they, mom, dad, brother, sister, cousin, friend, enemy, name, identifier, attribute, all of those features or descriptors of any sort are complete lies, as the vacuum is completely and utterly forever absent of them. So they are fake and false additions and relevant insofar. So here's the relativistic positional location aspect of it. As the game is being played. So they're relevant insofar as the game is being played, or for the utility of labeling portals with IP addresses, for knowing which one is being discussed or called for whatever reason. Okay? So in the ultimate sense, the answer to who is the observer is it's the vacuum. It's cosmic consciousness. It's infinity. It's you. It's God. It's everyone now. It's no one and everyone. But then also, why are we using names? Why are we using relativistic connections? Why are you my friend and why is someone else my enemy? Why is this person my mom, but that person's not my mom? Right? So they're relevant insofar as not only the game is being played, because that's where the whole enemy-friend thing comes in, right? You're my friend, but you're my enemy, right? So then that's where the game's being played, but then also the game's being played when you think that, your father or your brother or whoever is separate from you, right? So it's relevant there also. But it's also relevant just to label portals with IP addresses and the utility of being able to send them a message. So when a portal has a specific phone number that's associated with it, that's how you can contact that portal and communicate a message to it or that kind of thing. So it's relevant insofar as it has a communicative purpose. So rather than an indexical being a real solid thing, what you want to see it as is you want to see it as something that's extremely playful and malleable. Relational quantum mechanics also deeply, deeply ties into entanglement and singularity. And then decoherence, the observer is the qubit decohering itself into experience. So a good way to summarize what like an Einstein-Wigner-Wheeler interpretation could be is something like the geometry of attention itself is the participatory act of consciousness. The observer is the gravitational guiding curvature of attention that's probabilistically rendering potential into appearance. So the observer gravitationally renders reality.
Activated by attention.
Yes. Yeah. Activated by attention.
That's the first time we've kind of talked about what an activating force is there.
Yeah. Gravitationally guiding curvature of attention. Yes. We've talked about attention as like the participatory curvature that we've talked about that, but I get what you mean that it's like,
Not as specifically as the activator. We've talked about it participating,
yeah,
but not
as the activator. Well, when I say it, yeah, when I say it as collapser, I've said collapser and renderer, but I see why activator is a good word also that's coming up. Yeah.
It's like the light of your mind
Yeah.
projects into reality. Because you're in a dark vacuum, the light of your mind that you let in from the vacuum, then you learn more about this thing or you form it in front of you.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. Mm-hmm. The activator. Yeah. Something has to activate infinite potentiality into its rendered appearance, and that's what consciousness or the gravitational observer is, the activator of that holographic rendering in that moment. Turning something that is a quantum infinite potential into a specific quantum state that has a certain amount of diodes that are lit up in a manifold, that then through those diodes you get a hologram. And a diode can be something as simple as coffee or tea, or it can also be as complex as, am I rendering separation or not? So it can be an entropic measure or it can be a neutral one. or just a taste-based one, something like that. Yeah.
Well, the reason that activation is
Mm-hmm.
really relevant is because then that gets into the trifold opportunity. If there's something active, then it implies that there's also something passive and that there's also something neutral. So what would be the passive and neutral perspectives of this?
Probably that infinite potential. Yeah. The seething vacuum as something that always is, and then the
Infinitely feeding your desire.
yeah, and then the active would be the collapsing or rendering of that into a hologram, and then the neutral I think would play then with what we just said. That's something that's a little bit more taste based instead of something that's more entropic. So if you desire the experience of being a basketball player or a violinist, that's a little bit more neutral than, for example, desiring to start war on another country, something like that.
Deceive someone.
Or deceive someone, yeah. Yeah.
So what would be the new? I get that the vacuum would be the passive force. What is the neutral? Desire.
I would say that you could say that I've talked about this before in digital metaphysics too. I talked about how you can see infinite creation as both a neutral thing and also a contractive and expansive thing. So in a neutral sense, it's kind of like, do you want to drink coffee or tea? But in a contractive and expansive sense, it's, am I rendering something that's deceptive or am I rendering something that's unifying?
And that creates the spin.
And that creates spin. Yeah. Yep.
So what is the neutral force?
I would just say creation can take a neutral creative or a entropic. So that's how I would say it. I'm rendering everything through that Unicode conscious manifold. So I would say that even the whole notion of saying, passive versus active versus neutral versus the contractive and expansive and stuff, we're just kind of
Describing the movement on the same thing.
yeah.
The vacuum feeds you though indiscriminately of any desire at all. So that would be most neutral.
Yeah, you could say that is also. Yeah, I mean, just your pure your pure free will or your pure freedom itself can be thought of as neutrality as well, like the purest form of freedom. Yeah, the gift of God or the vacuum to itself is,
Really love.
which is really love and art and play. So we got to this. The observer gravitationally renders reality. So this is a really good way to connect all of the interpretations in a single sentence. So many worlds sets up the Copenhagen, directed by the pilot wave and cubism, as an RQM flow of decoherence. So that's why the sequence flows naturally like a cascading wave function collapsing into observation. Okay. So, I mean, this one slide might take quite a while to explain, but I'll try to get through this efficiently. Okay, So we have in that top left, we have vacuum, we have potential, we have superposition. What that represents in both a gravitational, a singularity, as well as a many world sense. Okay, so what that represents in general relativity and quantum mechanics is a gravitational singularity in many worlds. The next thing is entanglement. What entanglement represents in a quantum mechanical sense is relational quantum mechanics. What codes and ideas represent, which is the next thing, is quantum Bayesianism. What the observer, the renderer, the collapser represents, or the activator. Looking back over here. Yeah. Is the Copenhagen and the pilot wave. Then through that observer, renderer, collapser is what appears like cyclic time experiences and the perception, the varied perception or solidity of depth, as well as the decoherence of the very hologram reflection itself. So through a varying amount of frequencies, which is why those portals are all different kinds of wavelength frequencies that are emanating. And it's happening in a spinorial fashion where there's a creating and an eating, and a creating and an eating that's happening. Yeah, so this visual should communicate this line right here. Many worlds sets up the Copenhagen directed by the pilot wave in cubism as an RQM flow of decoherence. The sequence flows naturally like a cascading wave function collapsing into observation. So whatever is being holographically rendered in every single moment is a product of infinite potential, entanglement, codes and ideas, probabilistic weights, the observer rendering and collapsing, a specific time-space dilation, and a decohered holographic reflection that is based on the frequency of self-knowledge of that gravitational portal and observer, based on its quantum state. Yeah. Yeah. So this is all of them together in a single image. So this is trying to bring together vacuum holography with as the fundamental definition of consciousness, general relativity, and quantum mechanics all at the same time.
The observer is the neutral force.
Okay. The observer as neutral force, yep. Yes, it is.
Collapse then through your attention and focus is the active force.
Yeah. And then the collapse through attention and focus as the active. Yep. Yeah, so this breakdown, it should be able to take a bunch of confusion from studying all of the different models in general relativity and quantum mechanics and consciousness and different frequencies. And it should be able to bring them all into a single Unicode that makes sense, where you can fit every single one of them in their partial map description into a single coherent framework and understanding of how you work, what you are, how you work. So then we have this three-punch knockout of materialism. So almost 100 years ago, we had the Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen paper that described, okay, well, there must be some sort of pathways to local realism. There must be some sort of hidden variables theory. There's got to be something that basically says that space and time exist without the observer. And so then in 1964, we had John Bell, and we had his Bell's theorem, which basically said, okay, here is how we propose that you can test local realism using quantum mechanics. So piggybacking on the Einstein, Podolsky, and Rosen paper is Bell's theorem saying, okay, if you really want to finalize your understanding of local realism, whether it's real or unreal, the best way for you to do that is the following tests. These would be your best ways to test local realism using quantum mechanics. And then over the next 60 years, from Bell's theorem's origination all the way to the 2022 Nobel Prize, from, I believe, the 1980s, and then more in the late 1990s, and then again in the 2010s, and then again in the late 2020s. It's just over and over and over again, quantum mechanics showed that local realism is false. And then finally in 2022, it was given as a Nobel Prize in physics. So it was basically like saying, okay, what would be the final way that we could test that materialism and local realism through quantum mechanics is not possible? And so then it was like, okay, we're going to set up all these tests that show that materialism and local realism is not possible, and we're going to test it over and over and over again, and we're going to see that space-like separation isn't actually real. The death of materialism? So what you have to do is you have to entangle particles, and then you have to spread them across space. And then you have to measure properties of one, and then you measure and you see if how quickly that gives you the properties of the other. And so the idea is that, oh, well, if we spread them across the planet, it would take time to get the information, but it doesn't take time to get the information. So it's a non-local or omni-local entanglement. Yeah. Based on the observer. So it's not based on information that has to travel across space.
It's not based on the material, it's based on the observer.
It's based on the observer, yeah. 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 And that was done basically, it was done in the 80s, and then it was done again in the 90s, that was the 2020s. But each time the materialist basically said something along the lines of, well, there weren't enough or you didn't do it far away enough, or you didn't put enough things that made sure there was no effect of any. Yeah. It's been great watching it happen like that. Yeah, it's so funny. So now the new theory basically has to be a non-local, non-real gravitational quantum rendering theory of infinity, something like that. Which is beautiful because all of procedurally generated AI and video games and simulations and virtual reality and all this stuff is just a perfect reflection of that, saying, hi, I'm here to let you know what you are. Yeah. Hey, come in. This is perfect little reflection that's emerging just to let you know.
Or rejumble makeup of your existing thought codes.
Yeah. Peekaboo, peekaboo. Yeah.
That's
Oh,
what you've been looking at.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it even, it even really did start with radios. It's very cool. It started with radios and cinema and TV and projector screens and all of that stuff. It started 100 years ago or more. But yeah, but now it's becoming like, okay, well, virtual reality headsets is like, okay, that's not a radio station or a cinema projector. It's like, okay, this is a little too yeah, it's a little too directly in your face in compare. Yeah, yeah,
Reflection is really, really, really obvious. It's
yeah,
fully sensory.
and fully sensory, which is where we're heading beyond just visual to tactical and to olfactory and audio and just full dive immersion. But this was the big thing. This 3-punch knockout was really the big thing. Ba 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 ba. So this is kind of what that looks like. Also, what we just talked about. We are looking inside the hologram for a trail of causality.
yeah.
That's basically what it is. So when it all originates from the observers. So it appears like time, or it appears like space and distance. So it appears like that, right? That separation out there, right? But really, that's why yesterday at the end of the session, remember when I just kind of like, was like, remember when kids flip themselves upside down and they spend a lot of time just like looking like this, just like upside down at the world, right? So it's like that information is actually being in an entangled gravitational web of observers that are co-rendering a civilization, including the appearance of what looks like time and space like separation. But the information in the holographic rendering doesn't have a trail of causality that's present there. Instead, the trail of causality is completely originated from the observer. So the answer isn't, the trail of causality of this experience of drinking a sip of coffee. You would never say that experience originates from within the hologram, right? You would always say that the observer is causally originating the experience of drinking a cup of coffee. So it's simple things like that, yeah.
Otherwise, it wouldn't be your free will choosing
Yep.
that collapse.
Yep. So when someone says that, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, that's funny. So for example, when someone says something like the trail of causality is outside of me somewhere. So basically that's how a lot of victimization narratives originate. They originate by pointing the trail of causality to be external. So it's saying that you are making me feel this way,
Yeah.
right? So that's the really interesting thing, is that you actually can see that it is you doing some sort of a dojo training with yourself, for yourself. And so you're seeing in that moment that, okay, I'm learning something very unique and fascinating here. And I'm starting to see how I'm always the origin of causality. I'm always the origin of causality. I'm always the origin of causality. And that's where you get all of this infinite creatorhood, this infinite godhood, this infinite freedom, this infinite free will, this infinite wholeness, this infinite perfection, this infinite never victimhood, all of that stuff. It's all just a complete lie until you wake up from or putting the point of causality anywhere that's not yourself.
Yes.
So it's not like when we said, hey, like this observer network is now going to probabilistically decide where it wants to eat, right? It's not like that actually, quote, takes time for that observer network to come up with that decision. Because it all happens out of as the timeless singularity. It's only appearing like it's taking time to come to that decision and then to go and have that rendered experience. But so as long as you rest in the point of causality, which is capital YU, all of that is just timeless perfection that appeared like a time-based entanglement of conversation. So then that, from this viewpoint, So that little numbering thing is just observer 1, observer 2, observer 3, whatever. They're little IP addresses, but okay, so further playing on the same point, when you are looking at others and seeing separation, you are generating war. When you are looking at others and seeing reflections, you are generating utopia. Pretty simple. So if you have you and then you have an other, like in that top graphic, and other is always in air quotes, always, because it's always a reflection of you. If you put up this fake wall that you have no relation to that other observer portal, that's an illusion. But the moment that you start to see that it's a reflection, that's you behind those eyes also, that you are in an entangled singularity, that's capital R reality. And that's when you generate utopia. So the future of science is non-locality and non-realism. So realism is that objects exist independently of observation, and locality is that space-like separation and distance is real. So, for example, the coffee mug behind me right now does not exist until I decide to render it and holographically warp it into my appearance and existence. Also, the perception of it actually being farther away from me or not, it only belongs to the quantum state of the observer that is rendering the dream of it actually taking distance when it actually doesn't, because everything is only in the direct experience of the observer and of infinite consciousness itself. So reality is more like holographic projection. So taking quantum mechanics and unifying it with gravity as the observer, we're looking at a list of a couple things, okay? We're looking at the fact that materialism is dead, okay? There's no more ability to say that objects exist independently of consciousness, okay? So we're looking at basically a harmonization of the infinite subject with its appearance. We're just looking at a harmonization of it instead of a separation or segregation of it. Right? So you're not trying to say that objects aren't real or don't exist. No appearance exists. You're not trying to say that either. You don't want to go in the imbalanced direction of hyper-idealism or there's no dream that's even happening either. You want to balance it by saying, okay, so the nature of that consciousness is that it's codependently arising with objects and experiences. So meaning every single holographic appearance is out of that infinite singularity. So those two things are two sides of the same coin. The vacuum and its holography. The vacuum and its holography. Consciousness and appearance. Consciousness and appearance. But it's not a materialism. It's not that you contract the aperture and you somehow enter a real physical place that exists independently of your observation. So that's too far imbalanced in that direction. So there is no observer independent reality. The observer is ultimate reality, infinity, and God, and the observer is probabilistically rendering experiences, again, as that acronym, gravitational observer decoherer, or decoheres. God, G-O-D. A gravitational observer as an entangled singularity is decohering a superposition into a single rendered reality. That's your framing and your ability to reconcile consciousness with general relativity and quantum mechanics. Okay, so now we're going to get into an evolution of complementarity. So this is what we're calling cruciform physics. Okay, so basically what we have is we have indeterminacy and exclusivity. Okay, so Niels Bohr, about 100 years ago, after Werner Heisenberg had the uncertainty principle, Niels Bohr said, okay, well, there's got to be something that is an orthogonal connection to indeterminacy. Those weren't his exact words, but that was the general essence of where Bohr was going. So Werner Heisenberg went into, holy crap, everything is uncertainty until the observer makes a measurement, and that's absolutely bonkers, and it revolutionized all of physics. This was 100 years ago. Niels Bohr and Werner Heisenberg are super duper close, and Niels Bohr goes, okay, but there's got to be something else that is the complementary, orthogonal to indeterminism or uncertainty, and that's why quantum mechanics appears the way it does, and it's going to be a complete theory of the nature of reality. And so what he called complementarity was that orthogonal absolute to indeterminism or uncertainty. So a complete perfect perpendicular, basically, a complete perpendicular to the other.
Inside out and upside down.
Yeah. Yes. Well. Yeah. That's why it's cruciform physics. It's cruciform physics because it's a perfect orthogonal. Yeah. Yeah. It's the two things that perfectly complement one another as absolutes that are in their own complete domains that are maximum at right angles. Yeah. So yeah, so for example, in the cruciform, right? That's why we're using a cruciform, right? Because X marks the spot, right? Crucifixion marks the spot. If you want to wake up, you crucify your own ego and you realize you're everyone, right? So again, you use the cross here, right? But we're using the cross to understand this cruciform physics, and what we're saying is that on one side, on the vertical is infinity, is infinite potential, it's uncertainty, it's indeterminism, right? That's why the top of this hourglass has an infinite amount of possible experiences that consciousness can have right now. And then what happens is exclusivity, which is the other orthogonal absolute, its complement is this horizontal axis, which is the exclusivity principle or the no co-display principle, which we'll get to it here in a bit, which is the bottlenecking of the hourglass into a single rendered experience, which is why out of all of those possibilities up there at the top of the hourglass, only working out at the gym is currently being experienced for that observer. So the observer was like, should I go walk my dog? Should I go fly over to this business meeting? Should I go work on the computer a little longer? Should I take a nap? Should I work out? Should I go socialize with friends? You know, what should I do right now? But you can't render all of that stuff at the same time. You have to have infinite potential, like a cruciform. You have to have a bottlenecking of it into a single reality experience that's being rendered. Again, you cannot be in Florida and Alaska at the same time. So what we're saying is that we're doing some sort of a channeling of code from the sky into a single experience, or some sort of a channeling of code from the roots of the tree up the tree into its fruit or its leaves of the tree. So the state space and the experience are a non-dual conscious manifold, but they appear as a dual experience because it's two sides of one coin. So we're warping code from behind us into our field of view like a bokeh engine. The observer is hallucinating infinity into a focal point, into a single rendered experience. So with bokeh, like in photography and videography, what you have is if you're pointing a camera, you're pointing a camera lens at a specific object or a specific experience, and then what you do, the bokeh, is the taste of the blur that is around that. So if you remember the image at the end of part 2 of vacuum holography, that image was a big blur of infinite potential, and then in the focal point was only one rendered experience. That's why when you point a camera at something, or if someone takes a really good portrait of you, what they do is they blur everything else except the beauty and magnificence of your portrait, of your face, yeah.
We're just copying God's movement algorithm.
Yeah, in varying ways, like taking photos or videos, yeah. Nice. So in this visual, you can see it's like choose your lens, your experience, your adventure. So you're taking out of that infinite potential. It's the same thing as the hourglass. It's the same thing as the hourglass visual, and all those little different options. Now we're just putting one of those options in there, and we're saying I'm going to render this experience. But then next, I want to render the experience of eating out with friends. Next, I want to render the experience of going to sleep for a little bit, or playing with my son or daughter or whatever. So this is where we're going. We're taking this cruciform physics, we're evolving complementarity into a form of creative uncertainty. So that's why God is having this experience right now, right? This is a really good way to say it. You know, God is having this experience right now as the observers because of creative uncertainty. Because right now, nobody can tell you what's going to happen next. That's why. God loves this because he has no idea, she has no idea, it has no idea what the fuck is going to happen next. That's why it's so fulfilling, it's so artistically novel and creative, because it's like, dude, I got no idea what's going to happen with this civilization, with this world. It's such in a fascinating quantum state right now, and it's just going to keep rendering whatever it is, and it's going to be so cool to see what I do next as this observerse with this little pearl that is my rendering.
God's the explorer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the explorer. It's right here, looking at its exploration. Its little scientific probe, its little petri dish is Earth. It's all these little servers that are little petri dishes. And it's like, oh my gosh, how's it going to grow? This is so crazy.
A decentralized explorer.
A decentralized explorer. A distributed observerse looking at all of its little petri dishes at once.
Yeah, a decentralized child.
Yeah, with the like creative spirit of a child, fascinated and interested. The creative uncertainty is a very, very beautiful thing because you actually everything that's emerging is out of the beauty of wanting to know what's going to happen next, wanting to know out of infinity what's going to be created next. It's very, very cool. So a good way to say this is quantum uncertainty is the perfect emotional draw of the gravitational singularity to see how the outcome will render. Okay? It's the perfect emotional draw. Because it's like, okay, what would a gravitational singularity that is everyone always forever want to do more than anything but create a lucid dream through an observer portal that it can, through quantum uncertainty, have no idea what it's going to do, what choices it's going to make, what kind of play it's going to have, and then go through the process of rendering all of those outcomes, taking all those measurements as a little scientist on a petri dish in a little lab, right? And then just cosmically recycling into whatever other types of explorations or measurements or observations like a scientist that it wants to creatively have. So the complementary aspect to uncertainty we call exclusivity. So we're going to get into that now. So exclusivity can be thought of as the no co-display principle. We're going to get into that, but a little bit more on Heisenberg and Bohr first. So indeterminism and exclusivity form a perfect orthogonal cruciform. They are absolutes and cannot be superseded. Out of this cruciform mechanism of consciousness, all creation flows. Infinite creativity and uncertainty and potential, and the horizontal actualization or rendering of one possibility, of one outcome, of one holographic experience out of that infinity of possibility and potential. That cruciform mechanism is how all consciousness flows. All creativity of consciousness flows. Okay, so now we're going to talk about how the exclusivity is like one outcome or the no co-display principle. This is like the math of collapse. So within collapse, you can't co-render two outcomes at the same time. Again, you can't co-render being in Florida and in Alaska at the same time. We'll get to more examples of that in a second. Now, the taste of collapse is like the flavor is directing possibility and eating the light. So you take that bottlenecking of infinite potential, your flavor or your taste, it directs the possibility into a single exclusive holographic rendering, which is then what you're eating that light. You're experiencing that light. Those forms, that information. So it's like that projector, which is that bottlenecking. That's the flavor because it's directing what experiences you want to render, and then you're eating that light hologram of experience, right? Because your flavor is basically, oh, do I want to be in Florida or do I want to be in Alaska? In that example. And then you eat the flavor of the experience, which is being in Florida or being in Alaska.
Could you say that eating or composting
Yeah.
experience is the appearance of time?
That composting is the
Because it technically takes time to render, but when you let go of things,
yes.
I
Yep.
can't really say it right, but
Yeah.
I feel some relation.
Yeah. Out of timelessness,
Yes.
Seeding and composting is making a fruit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That appears like a time-based experience. Yeah. Nice.
How does that information get saved?
Ether, Akashics.
Imprint,
Yeah.
pattern imprint.
Patterns, imprints,
If you origami out the universe.
karmas, codes.
And when there's enough successful ones of them, it makes a.
In this model, where would that information sit?
With the observer portal.
In the observer.
Yeah, with the observer portal, like recorded in the vacuum for that observer portal specific holographic experience. And then everything's feeding back into it so that at any moment, whenever the next piece of rendered information, whether it's a new avatar cycle or whether it's a
It sits in me. It sits in her.
yeah,
In the vacuum. In
yeah,
the vacuum
The-
starts
in the
accommodating desire.
yeah, in the transcendent you, and also through the double slit of you,
Because you have
The
specific.
information gets sent there?
which is you.
Because it's composted. That's how it's known.
Because and we got to be careful with sent there because, you see what I mean? Because it is you already, yeah.
To the collective part of you. To the body of you.
How far away are your pupils from you right now?
Not very far.
Not very far. Yeah. Yeah. So that's why it's not going anywhere because you're already that information cycling right now or spinning right now.
Yourself. Eating yourself.
Yeah.
You're creating and eating at the same time.
So my review of the restaurant, that information is stored both in my body and sent to myself in the vacuum.
Your review of the restaurant? Oh.
Data. As in
As in date. Oh, okay.
It's coded with emotion too, like how strongly you put your energy into that review.
Yeah.
In a negative way.
Right. Yeah, that plays into that spin. Yeah. So whatever is happening right now has a direct connection to infinite potential as you already, so it's not a different place called infinite potential, right? Okay? So just imagine that you're that and that there's like a clear feeling that you're that. And then imagine the other side of that is rendered experience, which is in front of your face. So everything is informatically cycling between those two things all the time. So it's not like it's going somewhere. It's already right here. Yeah.
Okay. That helps.
Nice. Excellent.
This doesn't go anywhere,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
but it goes somewhere. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's like saying that, well, how can I be an entangled singularity but also be sitting in this specific chair? So that same thing that you're thinking about right now is that what I just said is an analog to what you're thinking about. And so the answer is that you're in the seat of where you are everyone at once and you're looking out this double slit at the same time. So that's why you're basically in the infinite potential as the infinite potential while you're also rendering a single hologram, which is an informatic recursive spinorial process.
Like if you think of endless eyeballs forever in an endless toroidal shape, you're either looking out away from.
Yeah, exactly. You're in the doorway. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're right there. You want to have one foot in infinite potential and the other foot in the rendering. Exactly. That's why it's not there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere for the information to go. It's already right there. You're living right in the beach. You're living in the beach, yeah, of it. Yeah. 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 And it's bang holing right there, right there. Yeah. Yeah. Nice. We just had someone in person stand in the door frame.
Like if this room was closer to God, in that room was separation. So the further out the separation you go, the least you can see in here. And the further in you go, the more.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And neither one of them is a preferred absolute. You stand in the door, in the doorway frame. Yeah. So, but now here's the interesting thing. You keep playing into this no code display thing.
It's just it's an awareness of where
Yeah.
where you feel.
You are always standing in the doorway, and it's an awareness of if you feel like you're contracted in your aperture or if you feel like you're expanded back home. Yeah.
And then feeling both at the same time.
Being aware.
Yeah.
Oh, this is so good.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, so now make sure you prop it open. Yeah, okay. All right. Excuse me. Okay. Glad it's landing. Yeah. Good. Good.
I'm sweating so.
I know, me too.
Not from the heat, I'm just excited.
Yeah, same. Yep. What?
Forgot the room's so
Oh yeah, it's all good. These are really good examples. They're really simple examples of no code display. Can you live in LA and NYC at the exact same time? Can you be a doctor and a lawyer at the exact same time? Can you marry and have family with two spouses across the world? So the more that you render a timeline, the more the other gets blurry. So you can't actually render a specific outcome and know the measurement of that outcome while also really, really desiring to measure another outcome. You have to pick. There are that's why location, career, relationship, those are big, big ones where you just have to pick. You can't measure both at once.
Because there's a certain amount of light or energy that can come through the tiny little portal.
Yeah.
At once.
Yes. Yeah, the bottlenecking happens. Okay, so check this out. These examples, you can't live in LA and NYC at the same time. You can't be a doctor and a lawyer at the same time. You can't marry and have family, two spouses across the world at the same time. So this is what that no code display or that exclusivity part of the cruciform physics is. And so the more that you render a timeline, the more that the other gets blurry. So this is what Niels Bohr was saying with complementarity. He was basically saying, and we're evolving it, that once you start taking a measurement, you actually can't get the information from the measurement that is mutually exclusive from that one. So I can't actually measure what summer in Alaska is like if I'm really badly wanting to be on the beach in Miami during the summer. So I have to render one of those experiences. So as I start to render what life is like being in a marriage, right? This one's very common, right? Relationships, location, and career are very common no co-display things, right? Not obviously when you can't, you can order a burger and a salad at the same time, but you get what I mean, that there's, yeah. That's why people ask steak or chicken. You're not going to order both. That's a lot of food. But you see, you're always rendering one of those. So, for example, like with a marriage, like significant others in marriage, in order for you to know what it's like to experience a 10-year, a 20-year, a 50-year, until the end of your life type marriage, you have to give up the other measured information. You will never have access through this observer portal of what that other information is like. But if you went towards that other information, then you wouldn't have this information of what the marriage is like for your life, right? So that's why, when you have a kid, you're taking the measurement of what it's like for your portal to have the experience of having a kid. But that automatically means your portal will not have the measurement of having no kids. Right? So that's what is trying to be said. Your portal can't have the measurement of being a scientist in Europe studying genetics while also being a entrepreneur minor in Africa or something like that. You're gonna render one of those two timelines. And the other one it'll always get blurry. It'll always get blurry. So, yeah, it's inefficient for it not to. So many worlds is holding all of that, and Copenhagen is limiting what you can see through the observer portal, which is exactly why physics appears the way it does. That's a great way to say it. Physics is literally appearing the way it is because God has fine-tuned the mechanism of infinite potential collapsing into a single reality through what we call many worlds in Copenhagen, guided by the observer as consciousness that is rendering every moment for itself, as art, as play, as choice, as creativity. Yeah. And the physics of it is that it can't have both in a single portal view. It has to have one or the other. That's what makes it so fascinating. Honestly, I think that this is probably one of the most understood, most fascinating aspects to all of physics, all of consciousness. It's so simple because it happens all the time. It's like the probability thing that we were talking about earlier. You're always going maybe, what if this, what if that, probably, blah, blah, blah. You're always doing that. The same thing's happening with, you're always doing no co-display stuff. Here, let me give you the most profound example that people go through in their lives. One of the most profound examples. Because a lot of people have this as something that's relatable to them, which is the 3-year mark in relationships. It's one of the most well-studied psychological and sociological and relationship phenomena that exists. The 3-year mark in relationships marks the decision that's made between the two observers if they're going to stick it out with each other into something longer, like potentially a marriage or whatever, or not, or if they're going to break up and split. So a lot of people go through this because sometime around that two-year mark, you're starting to be like, are we doing this? 3 years, it's like, holy crap, we kind of have to make a decision if we're going to do this or not, right? So that right there is a perfect example of no co-display. If you make the decision to be with that other observer portal, the other timeline will get blurry. It'll get blurry where you will know your life without them, right? But if you make the decision to split from them, you will know what it's like to not be with that observer portal, but you will not know what it's like to be with that observer portal. Yeah? So anyway, that's one of the most commonly understood examples of the no co-display or the complementarity or the cruciform physics, basically. Okay, so again, the best no co-display examples: location, career, relationship. So take this example. I have a friend. My friend lives in California, right? So my friend location is in California. My friend career is in computer science or something like that. And my friend relationship is in a serious committed relationship, okay? So what I'm saying is that we have in that wave function, we have it collapsing into a holographic rendering that is living in California, being a computer scientist, and being in a serious committed relationship, right? So at any moment, if he, she, whatever, if you want to leave that location, you have to not render living in California anymore. You have to render living somewhere else. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, good.
If you're everywhere all at once all the time, you have to have that point to experience. Like without the gift of time, there'd be no free will, there'd be no choice.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I could honestly talk about cruciform physics and I could talk about it forever, but this is also what quantum gardening is, because you're gardening the journey of being in California. You're gardening the journey of computer science. You're gardening the journey of being in a committed long-term relationship. But so you're gardening those things. So at any point, the no co-display thing is also equivalent to composting, right? So the no co-display is, so you're saying if you want to not live in California, you have to compost the quantum gardening that you've done in California so that you can quantum garden living in Florida. Okay? Right? So it's that. That's what's that's what the gravitational portal is always doing. It's always gardening like that, but it's gardening in a no co-display way. Gardening happens in a no co-display cruciform fashion. There's always an hourglass bottleneck that's happening. So here's another good way to understand no co-display. So
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's like 9 in a row.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. I love it. The comment is like, okay, man, we've pointed the same thing like 9 times in different ways. I get it, which is good. Actually, that's great that it's landed that well, which is great. I'm still betting that this analogy is going to land for someone that still hasn't in a way gotten it. So like a console that's rendering New York City or LA, okay? Or Red Dead Redemption 2, which is a video game, or God of War, which is a video game, or Gears of War. So if you want to play in New York City or in LA, you have to take a flight. You can't be in both at the same time. But the same thing's true if you want to switch from playing Red Dead Redemption 2, you can't just power up and play God of War on the other side. You have to close out the Red Dead app or pause it in order to boot up the other app and put all of your attention and gaming on that other app. Yeah. Okay, so observer as a qubit. So superposition decohering. So coherence is the state of superposition, and decohering is the loss of that superposition. Decoherence is what renders a hologram. And it's a little tricky with words, because you could say, you could say that a hologram appears coherently, Right. So it's a little tricky with words, kind of like the whole inflation, deflation, or contraction, expansion thing, or entropy and neg entropy thing. But this is how we are using the words. This is how we are using it to understand what is going on. So coherence is infinite potential, superposition, and decoherence is the loss of that superposition into a single rendered holographic reality. So we equate superposition decohering with the rendering of a timeline out of potential. So consciousness is constantly oscillating between qubit and bit. It's constantly oscillating between qubit and bit. Okay? So the reality of that gravitational portal is that it's always going superposition, decohering, superposition, decohering, superposition, decohering, right? So right now, food is in a superposition. We don't yet know what exactly we're going to do, but we have kind of an idea, like a probabilistic idea, right? So we're going to decohere one outcome. Yeah, great. Qubit, bit, qubit, bit. So a qubit is a superposition. A bit is a classical collapse into a single rendering. So superposition, classical collapse, superposition, classical collapse, superposition, classical collapse. So all of those options, again, gym, work, rest, or play, they exist as a superposition, and then they're measured by a probabilistic weights and linear algebra that is then gravitationally and observationally chosen, decohering into a single timeline. So probability and choice are fundamental to rendering. Probability and choice are mathematically represented as probabilistic weights in linear algebra, which we're going to get to in the next session.
You could think of that probabilistic weights in linear algebra as law.
As a what?
As like law.
As law, yeah.
Supported by the heart. You know,
Supported by the heart.
like what is
Yeah.
your desire?
What is your desire? Yeah. Yep. Yep. And you know how many...
It is nothing if your desire isn't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, yes. If your desire isn't God, then
Yeah.
you'll feel dissatisfied,
Yeah.
basically. Yeah. And actually, choice is one of the things that a lot of portals struggle with the most, is which choice should I make? What should I do? Yeah. Especially, you know, feminine polarity energy is very open and spacious to choice and stuff. And then is usually asking masculine polarity, hey, make the choice for us, what we want to do, whatever. The trope goes, honey, where do you want to eat? And the answer is, wherever, I'm good with anything. And then the masculine choice is made about, okay, well, I want to eat here. And then when the feminine polarity gets there, it says that I didn't want to eat here. No. That's funny. I'm just saying, it's just that funny classical joke of it. Okay. So we're getting where son. Code as quanta fighting to be seated. Okay. There's 128 billion hours of human attention daily. I talked about this in my TEDx San Francisco talk from like 8 years ago or something. And so that 128 billion hours of human attention daily, the quanta, those ideas are racing to occupy the collapse space. They're racing to spread their seeds into these gravitational observational soil portals to grow their species of rendered reality scape.
Just like semen and egg and
Oh, that resonated?
Well, now I understand the fight for social media better.
Exactly. This is all about the fight for attention in social media. This is exactly all of that. Yes. Yes. Great. Keep it up. Spit out the next thing that's coming up right now, because this is a great subject. It's mind-blowing. It's 128 billion awake hours of human attention every day. So that's 8 billion times 16 hours, because the other 8 you sleep, right? So out of those waking hours, the entire economic monetary system is tied to captivating attention. to grab market share, because then your company can last longer and pay greater dividends to its shareholders because you've captivated attention better. That's why we have the infinite scroll. That's why we have TikTokification of social media.
Your inflated world alive.
Yeah. Yeah, the more you can keep the inflated world alive, the more that you get a political propagandist thing that triggers you emotionally in a fiery way, the more you share that and say what a bunch of retards or idiots, and then the more that that continues to spiral and spin. So the whole inflated consumer price index is and social media attention economy are deeply interwoven in a self-fulfilling prophecy of a circus freak show instead of a expanded utopia. Yeah.
They spread seeds just as fast,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
not faster.
Yeah. Well, because the classic, exactly. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. The
So you can get AI slop really fast.
really fast. Yeah. Versus something that takes true nuance. Yeah. 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 That's why I believe it's the Mark Twain quote that goes that, the falsities and lies spread faster than the truth can put on its shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. The truth is all like, okay, how do I say this in the most nuanced way possible and the most superpositioned and loving and unified way possible? And then falsity is just like, these people are fucking retards, shoot him in the face. And it's like, oh, okay, let's share that.
And it gives you energy. It's like a vampire. Just stay alive.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes. So the whole idea of those ideas racing to occupy collapse space, if what you're imagining is you want to imagine the connectome of all the gravitational observers entangled around as the cosmic vacuum around the world. Then all of those gravitational observers are little soil portals. All of them are just little open, spacious soil portals. Then the quanta, the code, the idea that gets fabricated by those portals and tries to spread itself across that internet connectome of stuff, it is racing in much of the competition, is racing to try to occupy as much of those open, spacious, soiled gravitational portals as possible, because then they will join their team, their jersey. It will join their jersey and wear it and say that this is best, and then it'll cognitively cluster around that, and it'll further reify itself, and it'll further try to propagate itself and all of that. And so if you zoom out completely from all of that, what you do is you engulf it all, you integrate it all, and also then you propose whatever your creative joy is in a gracious, loving, unified way and say, hey, this is what my creative joy is. It's talking about these theoretical physics things, changing consciousness at the root, building regenerative infrastructure. And then that gravitates and resonates and harmonizes with whatever portals. And then you keep building that rendering from there. So that's the non-deceptive, non-manipulative, non-egocentric way of generating holographic seed that spreads, but in a way that respects free will. Yeah. This just meditating on this and mapping it and visualizing and understanding it also helps you become more masterful for all those tethers that are trying to come in all the time. Those tethers are all over the place. They're everywhere all the time. And just getting really damn good at that is already a tremendous amount of freedom, sovereignty, mastery, ownership of your own frequency, all that. So you're always in charge of what you're quantum gardening, and you're never interjecting, you're never bringing into yourself a seed that's not of highest resonance harmonics with you. Yeah.
Yeah, because the better you get at that, it's you've chosen your precise focus of what you want to give your light and render
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah, nice. Nice. Yeah. The comment was that the more precise that you are with your discernment, the more that you see exactly and you give it's what you give your light to. It's what you shine your light through.
everything else is just deflected almost naturally.
Everything else is naturally deflected. Beautiful. Okay. So the internet, communications, social media, AI is a code C and a quantum fruit forest of different reality-scapes. A gravitational observer connectome of entangled rendered reality where portals, gardening code is ultimate reality. Okay? Portals, gardening code is ultimate reality. The vacuum generating holograms is ultimate reality. Gardening code is ultimate reality. That garden code can be where we eat for lunch. It can be whether you want to have a child or not this life. It can be whatever you want to do. But that's all gardened code. And seeing how it's in that crazy code C and quantum fruit forest of all of that reality scapes, and then being able to be like, okay, well, oh, geez, look at that fruit. Oh, my gosh. Oh, okay, but that fruit, that's cool. Okay. Now I want to generate a new seed. And I say, yeah, it's just stuff like that. Go ahead. Were you going to say something? Okay. So now we're wrapping up. So proof is in changing the root and getting different fruit. So the proof is how changes in the root generate different fruit. So we're about to enter into session 3 on consciousness is the root, and session 4, which is shamanism is recoding. And it's all those sessions are all about how changes in the root generate different fruit. So if your theory can't tell me how I can make changes in my root and that will generate a different fruit of my appearance, then you don't have a theory. It's not an actual theory of consciousness or reality. So that's where the rubber meets the road. So the rubber meets the road with these questions. How to change my reality? What is the quantum state of the observer? What beliefs is it running? And what reality plants is it gardening? All right, so that's what we will get to in our next session. So again, thank you for tuning in, everyone. Greatly appreciate you. We would love to hear your comments below on the session on quantum gardening. Would love to hear from you. What are you quantum gardening? We would love to hear that in the comments below. What are you quantum gardening? A big thank you to our event sponsor, Guaranteed Community Advisors, Trusted Advisors in Sustainability. Check out that QR code or the link in the description below. Also, thank you to our room sponsor, Integrity Tax and Business Advisors. Same thing, scan that QR code or check out the link in the bio below for more info. And lastly, thank you for attending the Unicode seminar. Our suggested daily donation is $33, $66, or $111, depending on how much perceived value you feel like you've gotten for this and how much you want to support our mission and our vision. So you can scan that PayPal or Venmo down there, or again, click in the link in the description below. Okay, thanks for tuning in, and we will be back with the next session here in a little bit after a little break. And that will be, again, consciousness is the root and shamanism is recoding. We're really excited to share that with you. Thank you for tuning in again, everyone. Much love.
Nice.
Aw, you...